welcome to Got Metrics, Build a Metrics Store. This is a Databricks on Databricks story. So thanks for coming. Before we get started, I always like to do a quick little skit and a little story to get us kicked off into things.
Bruce, I saw the dashboard recently. We seem to be making 10 million run rate. That's great, huh?
10 million? Weren't we at 50 bazillion just yesterday?
What dashboard are you looking at?
I'm looking at the one with 50 bazillion, man. Like.
Well, wait a minute. Let me check my dashboard here. No, it's 10 million. How many? What is this bazillion number? Never heard of this before.
Oh man, I like 50 bazillion way better than 10 million. It's just a better number. It's so much better.
How many zeros though?
Not enough.
Not enough.
All right. So does this resonate with anyone? Two executives fighting over the numbers. The numbers don't quite add up, right? Hopefully they're a little closer than 10 million and 50 bazillion, right? Okay, we may have exaggerated this a little bit, but this is a pretty common scenario that we find ourselves in, okay? So I'm not the head of product, and he's not the head of American sales. So a little bit about us really quick. So my name is actually Bruce, though, and I am a senior director, and I'm the head of our data platform org. And previous to Databricks, I spent a number of time at other companies. I sort of have a propensity for red logoed companies, and trust me, my closet is full of red shirts. So
I'm Zubair. I'm actually a director of data science at Databricks. Before that, I worked at Google and McKinsey and have had my fair share of these conversations that I just shared.
All right, so now that you got to know us a little bit, we'd love to get to know you a little bit before we get started, all right? So raise your hand if you've ever made a math mistake. All right, good. Honest people, humans in the room. Humans make mistakes, right? Second one, how many of you realized halfway through your analysis that you were using last year's data? All right, there's some of the data scientists, data engineers, and data practitioners in the room. All right, last question. How many of you have made a mistake that cost the company more than your annual compensation from bad data? All right, there's some management in the room.
Yes.
All right, fear not, you're all in the right place. We've all been there. Zubair and I have been through these stories. These are actually very, very normal, okay? So let's go ahead and just dive right into this. So I like to talk about once upon a time, because we've been through these journeys and you're along this journey somewhere, okay? So once upon a time, this is where things usually start, right? Whether you're founding a startup, whether you're starting a new project, internal or external, it all starts with zero. And this is kind of a nice phase. Everybody knows everyone. You may or may not have customers. You may or may not have revenue. You most likely don't have profit. And you have your favorite spreadsheet for all your data. And your data actually fits on a spreadsheet, right? This is the phase of like finding minimum viable product and so forth, right? And so with some luck, some grit, and some innovation, you succeed. And things start to look a little more like this, right? So that success, you hire some more people. And those people write some more code. And that more code leads to more data. And you kind of have more of everything. And you definitely have some more hope and some more dreams. This is the place for potential and growth, right? So you're trying your best to find out what's the potential of this thing that we're building. And hopefully at this point you have a little bit of revenue, right? And you're probably buying some of your favorite SaaS tools. But this stage is a little bit more complicated. It's a little more complex. You have metrics and you have dashboards, but they're all in the different tools. So they're all siloed, right? So it's really difficult to join your data together because of these silos. This is the phase of more, right? And so what do we do here, right? Well, of course, we build a lakehouse. We ingest all of that data into a lakehouse. So now you can it's really easy to join the data. You don't have your data silos anymore, right? Real simple, right? Problem solved, we're done, right? Well, it's a little more complicated than that. And the challenge here that you might find is that your business logic gets scattered everywhere. Some people run their logic next to their raw data. Some people run it in their medallion architecture. Sometimes it's even in your SQL dashboard or your spreadsheet. You know, when you do that average function, that's actually business logic, okay? And then, well, the numbers and metrics don't line up, okay? And then tracing and debugging why they don't line up is actually very, very, very challenging. And you might be saying, there must be a better way, right? And while I'd love to tell you that at Databricks we didn't have this problem, we absolutely had this problem, okay? When we got started, everyone had read-write access to everything. The numbers didn't line up. We had multiple solutions everywhere. So we built a metric store, okay? And so the metric store helps us in a number of ways. It helps us organize our data. It helps us organize our code. And we actually have a common place to actually consume metrics from, okay? I'll talk a lot more about the insides of this and how we went about building this and the experience of it. But first, I'd like to bubble out a little bit. So first, I'd like to talk about the separation of concerns here. So as I mentioned, I'm the head of data platform. And our platform engineers really care about a few things differently, right? So we care a whole lot about the orchestration. We care about making sure your metrics are actually versioned correctly. We care about the deployment. We sort of care about the compute and the storage as well, because we kind of have to. But we actually care the least about the actual metrics. Okay, we actually talk about this in our org a lot about how do we make sure that we are data unaware. Okay, now on the flip side, our data scientists care extremely a lot about the metrics itself and almost nothing about the actual storage. Okay, and that's the way it should be, right? And so, well, thanks to building on Databricks, a lot of these concerns are abstracted away from us. The box at the very bottom is actually the cloud provider, right? So thanks to Databricks, we don't have to worry as much. We can care a little bit less about that compute storage. And thanks to DB SQL, Lakeview, and Unity Catalog, we can care a little bit less about those access management and stuff, okay? So then we focus on the metric store, and those layers combine into offering a very cohesive offering that data scientists get to work on and focus. So before I get into the metric store itself, I want to talk a little bit about metrics, right? This is a metric. Don't worry, this is not a real metric. I drew a line on a chart, okay? I drew a line on the deck, okay? But this is sort of the chart we all love to see. It's a line that goes up and to the right, right? We're successful, as long as this is not cost, right? Now, the thing is, now that we have these metrics, it's great. We're like, great, we can measure and we can see things. But the reality is that's not good enough, okay? We actually need to start developing our understanding. We actually need to understand why these metrics are going up. And while luck certainly played a role in us getting here, someday our luck will probably run out. And what follows this phase is one of these three, right? Do you have that continued success? And do you have that exponential growth that everyone wants? Or do you keep growing? Then you're certainly successful, but your business the growth slows down a little bit. Or does your luck run out and your dreams may turn into nightmares, right? And so I've been at many different places, and I've sort of seen this play out at a lot of places. And so here are some of the tendencies that I've noticed as it comes to data. The first thing is, can you measure? Can you measure, and can you measure accurately? That's sort of the minimum viable that you need, okay? And the second part is data-informed decisions, right? Can you understand the levers that actually impact your business and how to measure those levers, right? And so that success is actually informed by data and intellectual honesty. Now, I like to call this phase is the phase of learning how wrong you are, because you're going to make a lot of decisions and the metrics aren't going to move in the right direction. But at least you have the visibility to actually make corrective action very quickly and course correct, okay? It's never that smooth. So our best intentions aren't what drives impact, in other words. Our intellectual honesty and our understanding of that data and metrics is what drives the impact, okay? And then once orgs get here, they're also able to leverage some very strong capabilities that are built on top of data and AI, okay? And that's where you actually start to see that differentiation. So we're left with this question. Are we lucky or are we excellent? We need to answer that question. To tell us about our journey and our quest for excellence, I'd like to invite up Zubair, because he is the Director of Data Science at Databricks, and he's going to tell you about the journey that his team took us through to accomplish this on such a powerful platform like this.
Thank you, Bruce. So let's do a thought experiment. How many people have asked this question about themselves? Raise of hands. Wow, a lot of people don't care about their net worth, huh? Okay, so just walk with me here. I'm going to go through this question, right? This is not very different from a question an organization like Databricks might ask itself. It might say, how can I increase product adoption? How can I better manage my margins? And so on and so forth. So this question is clear. So we believe the best way of approaching questions like this is to decompose the problem, right? This is the simplest decomposition I can think of, right? To increase my net worth, increase my assets, or reduce my liabilities. Okay? It's starting to look like a tree. You can break it. It's mutually exclusive, right? But let's move forward, right? Let's take the first branch of the tree, and there's a bunch of ideas I can pursue, right? I can get promoted, get a salary increase, maybe invest differently, start a business, invest in my education. Most of you are here, right? Doing this. I can do the same for the other branch of my tree, which is reducing liabilities, right? I can maybe reduce some high interest loans, maybe change my unnecessary expenses. So collectively, it's starting to look like a much larger tree where the two initial branches have become, two additional branches and leaves. We're still not anywhere closer to answering the original question, how do I increase my net worth, right? But this is starting to form the foundation of what we need to orchestrate when it comes to our data, right? The tree is now starting to tell me what I need to go collect, what do I need to compute, and what do I need to track, okay? It is the foundational layer, absolutely foundational layer. So this is where we believe metric store comes in. I need to spend more time thinking about the tree than worrying about collection, computation, and tracking, okay? The decomposition is also very powerful because it enables us to answer deeper questions of this data that I now trust, okay? Just a couple of examples here. You can ask a very top-down question, which something along the lines of, what action can I take to increase my net worth by 10% in the next 3 years? So go scan this tree and tell me which is the best lever, okay? Or I can ask a bottoms-up question, which is saying, I have chosen an action, which is let me invest $100 every week in the financial markets and tell me what sort of bump on net worth can I expect. These questions become feasible with the tree, okay? And finally, decomposition also helps you get to much deeper insights, right? So why just stop at answering these top-down, bottom-up questions or just tracking numbers? I can now begin to detect anomalies in my net worth. Maybe there's a sudden increase in my net worth or drop, right? By the way, personal story, I just saw a $1,000 charge on my health account. I was like, what just happened? It's calling my wife, right? So yeah, it's something like that. Like something happened, right? Where did it happen? Second thing is I may want to do a baseline forecast of my net worth. this may be useful for planning something in the future, right? And finally, when certain changes happen, I don't want to spend the time figuring out why something happened. I should be able to quickly compute where the change is coming from, right? Maybe the example of a change in your expenses, maybe there's a change in my forecast even. Like yesterday I was forecasting this much net worth, now my forecast is different. What changed? I should be able to explain a forecast as well. So all these things, right? This framework of having the tree with the decomposition is what we call the metric tree at Databricks. And the platform or the foundational technology we use to orchestrate that tree is what we call the metric store. And Bruce already introduced it, right? And we'll have more details for you. So let the metric tree and metric store simplify, enable, and guide your work. So what does it look like in day-to-day at Databricks, right? So moving away from the net worth example, let's talk about Databricks, right? So at Databricks, I think the analogy I have is like, we use this metric tree and metric store technology and the concept of a metric tree to build almost like a smart, automated greenhouse, right? So the greenhouse is our organization, and the plants in the greenhouse are almost like our company priorities. And you want to make sure they are being monitored, nurtured, and being sustained for growth, right? So we've accomplished a bunch of things. 3 things I want to call out. 100% of our company priority metrics that we report to the board are orchestrated through the metric store, right? We are observing them, we are forecasting them, we can explain them, right? Because of this foundational technology. We are also able to use very specialized care for certain sections, right? So maybe there's a company priority that is, let's say, higher priority than other priorities. We can actually go deeper and we can say, okay, let's actually think about this more, where human intuition and human knowledge can come in, but we don't have to worry about the orchestration because we have the metric store. And we can dig deeper and even use it to align our functions. So finance, go-to-market, product, engineering, they all are talking the same language. And a third example of what we've come at Databricks is, if you move away from this concept of your company priorities and functions, you may even have a function that enables everything, right? So can we take a function and its metrics and go deep? Because that function is sort of like helping the entire company run better, right? So this helps with operational reviews and whatnot. So all in all, by using this framework of metric tree and the metric store, we're able to make sure Databricks is being monitored and it's continuing to remain healthy. So going back to the visual from Bruce, right? I would like to extend this a little bit, right? It's no longer just metrics that are being enabled by metric store, but it's beginning to look like a formalization of our expertise and skills. So when it comes to forecasting, anomaly detection, explainability, these are capabilities that are now foundational, right? So this is starting to address the question from Bruce that are we lucky or are we excellent? With this, we are being excellent, not lucky. And I no longer see these things as like extensions of metric store. I see them more as the components, integrated components of metric store. Because when you think like this, then everybody in the organization is no longer having to think about these things. It just comes out of the box, right? So if a data scientist team comes with a new anomaly detection model, which let's say is better suited for reliability data versus revenue forecasting, let's say, right? Everybody in the company benefits from it. It's not something you have to go out and build. It comes out of the box and everybody benefits. So with this framing, I will hand it back over to Bruce because he'll not take you into the internals of metric store.
Awesome. Thanks, Zubair. So let's zoom into the metric store. What is the experience of this? How did we do this? So first, let's talk about a traditional approach. A traditional approach is you have separate transform and semantic layers, okay? Sometimes this is either you're building it yourself, sometimes you're buying different SaaS solutions that fit into these, and you might even have different people working on different things. You might have a data engineer, you might have a dashboard specialist, and then sometimes you have a data analyst who can do everything, right? So like that shape of where you work actually changes in that traditional approach, okay? And so while SaaS might help you a little bit, this fragmentation still leads to handoffs. And those handoffs have mixed quality, they have mixed integrations, they ultimately slow you down. Okay? So this is our approach. Our approach is actually to vertically integrate both the transform and the semantic layers. Okay? By doing this, it integrates the data model definition, the metric metadata, and it eliminates the need to switch between all the different tools and switching contexts. Every time you switch tools or switch contexts, you kind of have to you lose productivity, right? Next thing is, the metric store allows us to have better quality control, right? So we can have control over these things because we actually calculate these things for you, okay? And then lastly, we build the metric store on top of the lakehouse. And so we actually can offer a much tighter integration with all the new Databricks features and functionality that come out, right? And this also allows us to enable that on behalf of the org and future-proof things. So some of you probably are excited about Genie or AI BI. We can integrate those on behalf of everyone with this type of platform. So vertically integrated, both transform and semantic layers, right? So remember this diagram? And effectively, we break down, the world that we actually look at is metrics are the unit of deployment, okay? Metrics are the unit of deployment. And I'll dive a lot further into this, but think about it this way. If you had many different SaaS tools, the unit of deployment is every single one of those SaaS tools, okay? In this case, we have one unit of deployment, which is metrics, okay? And I'll walk through what that actually looks like. And so this next view is sort of like the zoomed in different perspective of things. These are the sort of things that we do behind the scenes and inside the metrics store, right? Now, you're probably wondering well, what's the cost or what's the trade-off here? And there is a trade-off, okay? Every decision and every platform has a trade-off. And the trade-off here is a small amount of flexibility is traded off. But what you gain is a very opinionated and very productive offering, okay? So we believe that this is not just about the code, okay? We actually believe this is about the entire life cycle and the ownership of metrics. And this is a little bit about our culture as well. Data DevOps, so to speak, right? And so this gives us the ability to leverage and improve the observability for everyone, right? So you can get out of the box observability. And as we make improvements there, everyone benefits, right? You don't have to go to everyone and actually here's the best practice and everyone can go integrate them, right? And the key to this, the key to a platform like this is having a single point of entry on both sides. So we have a single point of entry for the consumption, right? So all of those tools, whether it's your BI tool, whether it's Genie, whether it's a number of these things, there's a single point of entry to access metrics, okay? That's key. The other point of this is there's a single point of entry and a paved road for publishing your metrics as well. So we can make assumptions on how you work. We can make assumptions on how your data is actually consumed, okay? So let's take a look at the developer experience, okay? So first off, versioning is built in, okay? We handle the version upgrades atomically and safely for you, okay? You need to we give you the ability to version things, but we take care of the orchestration. We take care of making sure that those are handled safely, okay? The definitions are written in SQL. The data model lives right next to that definition, okay? So you're not looking between two different tools here, okay? And the data checks are here as well, okay? So if you need to fix something, whether it's in your data model or your definition or both, you can also fix the checks as well, right? We don't have a separate tool that you have to go remember to jump into, okay? And while this might look a little bit daunting, the alternative is having these spread across all those different things that you're either buying or building, the inconsistency that does everyone actually use all these things, right? And it's actually really hard to context switch between all the different tools, no matter how good the UI is, okay? So having this all in one place means that you can change and fix things all together. And because it's also code, you can have it reviewed in a single PR as well, okay? Here's a report table definition. So first off, beautiful thing. It's called standard metadata, That's required, okay? Wouldn't you love it if every table had standard metadata that you could assume was there, right? This is our ability to have those standards. And if we change those standards, we can have that in one place for everyone as well, okay? Secondly, the underlying implementation, right? We build on top of Databricks, we build on top of Delta, right? You don't know about it per se, but it lets us actually leverage time travel out of the box for you if we need to, okay? We mentioned, Zubair talked about forecasting. It's a great story. We have an amazing data science team with amazing forecasting abilities. And we were like, everyone should have these abilities. That's all it takes. This is what it looks like. This is how you add forecasts, right? So let's talk about time a little bit. This is one of my favorite things. And this is one of my favorite things that I see everywhere, okay? This is extremely common and surprisingly easy to do inconsistently, okay? Time is one of the most basic things to get consistent, okay? And having a metric store allows us to actually eliminate time-date skew and parsing issues because it's centrally controlled, right? So we don't want you, like, is your week long Monday through Sunday, or is it Sunday through Saturday, right? Is your fiscal year having every single person try to do that? I promise you someone's gonna do it wrong, and it's gonna be like a day off, right? Or a month off. And so the thing is, when you say Q1, you wanna make sure that that lines up. And if you're even just a little bit off, those metrics aren't gonna line up, okay? So this allows us to actually have that control and that consistency across all of our metrics, okay? So there's really 3 pillars here. There's 3 pillars to the metric store. 3 pillars are consistent, canonical, and change management. We've really built around these 3 pillars. We saw some of the definitions of what that looks like. And once you learn how to produce in the metric store, it's the same and consistent, right? This actually makes sharing your metrics and supporting each other extremely easy, right? Because as we, remember, hire more people and our org grows, right? You might move teams or different pipelines or metrics, ownership might move around. And imagine how much that takes every time. That's really disruptive, right? And you have your spreadsheets and Gantt charts, and it's gonna take you a whole quarter to change ownership over everything. Well, in this case, if you know how to use the metric store and everyone does this the same way, all we have to do is update the owner field. Right? So we just update the metadata and the ownership has changed, okay? We also care about operations. Remember we talked about the life cycle, right? So we want the right operations and accountability culture. So we've built in the monitoring and observability, and it's standard out of the box, right? Batteries included, okay? We also integrate PagerDuty for you, okay? So that way you do get paged, right? And then orchestration for all of this just happens. You don't think about it, okay? And lastly, remember metrics aren't one and done. It's not like you defined it and then you're done, you never need to touch it anymore. That's just not the nature of data work, okay? Metrics change all the time, whether it's your source system data that changes, whether it's your definitions that change. So we've purposely built this from the ground up to make changes and iterate, right? I love it when the most common thing is when your company talks about the definition of an active customer, right? Is it $100 a month? Is it $300 a month, right? And you debate the heck out of that for your offsite, right? And then you decide and make that decision, and then there's a 2-quarter project to update all the dashboards and make sure everything's up to date. You have a PMO office to work with everyone to track everything down, and so forth, right? That's pretty painful, okay? And in our experience, you focus on that debate. You focus on what is the right thing, what is the correctness. You update in one place, and then things get recalculated, right? And because we have all the metrics in the same place, we also know the lineage. We also know what metrics are derived from each other, okay? So we also know when to backfill on your behalf. And so we have backfills built into this, okay? And then we can atomically change everything over all at once. So that way you don't have this inconsistency okay? So hopefully that helps you understand, like, these are the things that we really anchored and built the metrics store around, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. I've been working on platforms for the better part of like 15 years in my career, okay? And, you know, I have some like really closing thoughts on just platforms in general. So I've worked on online application platforms. Here we're talking about data platforms. I've worked on algorithm platforms, AI platforms. And while I could probably do a full talk on every single one of these, I wanted to give you guys some high-level insights and thoughts I have around all of these platforms and what they have in common so that you can start thinking about your own strategy. Okay? So the first one is platforms optimize for productivity and quality. The trade-off is flexibility. Okay? That is a worthwhile trade-off. Okay? You will always encounter some people who are like, I don't get to use my favorite like language. I want to use Rust and you're forcing me to use Python, right? So you're going to trade off some flexibility, but you're ultimately going to have a higher productivity and higher quality because of that, okay? Number two, platforms integrate together, okay? Platforms have network effects. We actually talked about that in this story, right? We started with metrics, but we found that like, well, all metrics need forecasting. All metrics, we want anomaly detection, and we want explainability for everyone, right? So we didn't just stop there and let you piece those things together. We integrated them as first-class citizens together, right? And so the value proposition explodes once you actually do the integration work on behalf of everyone. And lastly, platforms give you leverage. You build once, you leverage everywhere. This is especially important for data and AI. Especially in regards to data security, data privacy, and compliance work. How many people live through like implementing GDPR? I feel your pain. Right? That was years of work to implement GDPR. Okay, how many people know what the AI compliance is going to be next year? No one, right? So these platforms, if you have them in place, allow you to have a single point of entry in order to future-proof yourself, to give you that leverage to implement the future compliance that's not even created today, right? And you can work with the subject matter experts to do that, and they have the place to do that, instead of PMO with 2-year-long program to go chase down every single team to educate everyone on GDPR or whatever the compliance regime is, right? You can build it into the platform, okay? All right, so in closing, we hope this was really helpful. May your metrics be precise and complete.
May your data always be fresh.
May your forecasts be accurate.
May your anomalies be few.
May your initiatives be explainable.
May your decisions be informed.
And may you go from lucky to excellent. Thank you. All right, so if you liked our talk, we have a few other Databricks stories. I just finished doing another talk about our governance story and what we did with UC. Tomorrow, there's also a talk about our business and how our Gen AI is enabled in our business functions as well. So check them out online or go with that. All right, I think we're up on time, but find us afterwards and we can chat. All right, thank you very much.